All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me for episode 110 of Dad Bod Walking. Tonight, I've got my friend Ben Evans with me, and we're going to get right to it. Ben Evans, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings. Good, man. Doing great.
So, I want to preface some of the guests that I've had on before are folks that, I've known for a couple years, I've known for 20, 30 years, that, all sorts of stuff here. But Ben, you are in a very special group of mine that, for the purposes of this podcast, that I've shared a dozen times before of why I'm doing it, is you're in a special group of folks that my mother absolutely adored, that I had friends like yourself. And she always had a special place in her heart for you guys. I know, right? And so
Go ahead.
she so this one's very special to me in that I get to talk to my friend Ben Evans about how we became friends, and then really how you got to a spot where we met, and then what you've done from there. So, to let everyone know, Ben and I met when this was very early. I want to say 2012.
That's what I
Uh,
was thinking. Yeah.
um, uh, Mike Pence was running for governor. He was congressman at the time. He was running for governor. Um, Admittedly, I can't remember what your role was, but for the group of us, whether it was myself, you, Crabtree was kind of the grand poobah of it. Mark was in there somewhere doing something. So I'm not exactly sure what your title was. I just know that when we were together, we were all a team. I don't know that there were
Yeah.
titles or responsibilities other than we just tended to know what needed to be done. So that's how we met, and that was 2012, so 13 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know where your hair went, where mine. I
I
do,
know. I know.
just for those who are going to watch this, I do have a camera angle that I'm now very worried about. I don't know. I'm not sure. I think we're going to have to adjust that camera angle there because I've got a self-conscious thing. But I wanted to ask you some questions that led up to us meeting. How
Yeah.
how did you get involved with the Mike Pence campaign? And I think you worked
I,
when he was on the congressional side, but tell me how you got to that, and then we'll go from there.
yeah, and we can get to my official title during that time, but really, Bob, I was the glue that really just held the whole Mike Pence organization together. I just to throw that out there, and really, everything that he was able to accomplish can really be traced back to my involvement, I'm sure,
I
somehow
If
in the
not for you,
campaign.
I do want to I do want to interrupt just one small thing with
Sure,
you.
yeah.
So, I ran the Victory Center up in Northwest Indiana, and we were making phone calls from there. We were calling folks, getting the word out, the get out to vote push. And if you remember, my mom was the number one caller in the
She made,
entire
yeah.
state. And so I cannot tell you how many times that she would say, well, if it wasn't for all the phone calls I made, I don't know that he would be. And
That's right.
don't get me wrong, she also took credit for the Trump victory. She said, well, Trump the first time probably wouldn't have won if he didn't have such a solid conservative, governor on the ticket with him. And we wouldn't have that if it weren't for the 200,000 phone calls that I made. So oftentimes
That's right.
she and we let her have that. God bless her. And so yeah, so in a way, not only was it yourself is the glue for the team, but
Yes,
my
right.
mom was responsible for the get out the vote. You and my mother are responsible for the modern day Republican Party and Donald
I
Trump being president.
I think so. I think
That's,
that's.
I mean, it's,
I'm
you
waiting for
know,
my honorary space at Mar-a-Lago, but I haven't got the call yet. So,
and at
uh,
5 minutes we could almost end the podcast there because I don't know what more you
just
could possibly want.
no, no, we're done.
That'll be
We're
it.
done. But no, yeah. So I started off uh, in my. I feel like my career has been in three stages. And so I started off my first career as a youth pastor, executive pastor for a church up in Anderson, Indiana. And that was part of Mike Pence's congressional area at the time. And so I taught government and economics at the school in addition to some of my other duties. And so I got the kids, the young people involved in his campaign. And so we would work the polls and pass out cards, and we made it available for the young people to work whatever campaign. It didn't have to be that one, but we were plugged into that one, and they could work whatever campaign they wanted to. But that's kind of how I started getting plugged into his organization, and how I met Lonnie Zarnicki, who was his district director at the time, and Bill
And
Smith, who was his
for
chief
those
of
who have
staff. Go ahead.
for those who have ever known Lonnie, I've seen him several times since Mike had left for DC, and then in the time after. Um, one of which I will put you, perhaps erroneously, but I will put you in the
Sure.
same in the same category. One of the most noble, honorable,
Mhm.
spiritual people. I don't know that there's enough adjectives to put in front of, but if there were modern day men of faith in God, Lonnie
Yes.
Zarnicki is the first person at the top of that list that, in my estimation, is the best example of someone who walks by faith.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And maybe later I can get a story that illustrates that so well within the campaign and within the congressional office. But so I did volunteer work with them and began to through the through the course of my time. I'm trying to think how to word it. I really began to feel a change as far as my faith, and I don't mean on what I would consider the core tenets of faith, but a lot of the things that the particular denomination that I was associated with, the Fundamental Baptist Movement, would focus on. And so, as a youth pastor, I was frustrated from them always having to use a certain version of the Bible, or always focusing on dress or music or different things like that. That began my journey kind of out of the ministry, as it were. And I began to look for, okay, what does God have for me next? And so, in the process of just looking for another occupation, I went to Bill Smith, or I went to Lonnie and just said, hey, I don't know if you guys are looking for anything, but I'm looking to make a transition out of ministry.
And they really had, I feel like, a um I do I want to say a ragtag group of people? I mean, there are
Yeah,
there's a picture of yourself, Crabtree, and myself on the field at Lucas Oil. That again, I think my mom wanted that to be her profile picture for a while. She just loved it because the three of us knew what was going on in that moment. Any of the 4 billion people or 8 billion people in the world who would look at it, just be like, yeah, okay, that's a picture of some confused guys. But
yeah,
the what we went through to get to that
yeah,
point, but that we all had different backgrounds, we all brought something to the table, and I don't know if folks like Mike Pence and Bill Smith and Lonnie, I don't even know if they would fully take credit for assembling the team, though they did assemble that team. It was because I think we've all been a part of Team Sensen. I don't know that there's ever been any group like that just
Yeah, of
Okay.
course. We're biased and stuff, but yeah, I loved the team that we put together, or that they put together, for that. And I was 40, so I had been in ministry for 14 or so years. I was 40 years old, and when I went to interview, he said, "Look, we are looking for a driver for Mike, the congressman." And normally that position is like a 20-year-old that's
Yeah.
right out of college, and they said, we want somebody that's older, we want somebody that knows kind of how to conduct themselves in professional settings and things. And this was right about the time that he was third in leadership. I can't remember, is it Republican Study Committee? I think he was the
Yeah.
leader of the Republican Study Committee. And so he was gaining a lot of popularity, and so they were looking for somebody for that role. And so it was weird. It was like I just starting over, and I was doing a job that normally a 20-year-old did. And so when he was in town, I would drive him around to events, help plan events. When he wasn't there, I would work in the Muncie or the Anderson office, with constituent issues or whatever other events representing him in the community. And so it was just a very interesting
It
time.
it was because when I took over at the Victory Center, they call it at the time, I I was in my 30s, and I'd hop on these conference calls, and I think the statute of limitations is passed on all of this now, but
Oops. So,
no, just to say it was odd that so many of these folks were, collegiate age, and,
yeah,
at the time, I was like, "Well, I'm married, can I go to dinner?" I mean, it was
yeah,
an odd experience because, um, in a lot of ways, that I'll just call it grunt work for lack of a better word right now, is really geared towards those, early 20 somethings that have all the energy
yes,
and no responsibility because you have to be able to move and go and uproot that. So folks like us who, we were, married and,
yeah,
had lives, we then also had to have relations with folks that understood that. That,
yes,
"Hey,
yes,
I'm doing a parade in Bristol, and then I'm going to a door knocking thing over here, and then I'm gonna go make 1,000 phone calls, and that's 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. And by the way, I have to do that 7 days a week. Oh, by the way, I have to do that for the next, 40 weeks."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
It was a busy time, and hindsight. We adopted two children from Guatemala. They were young. My wife had them a lot of the time, so she really um, held everything together. And hindsight, you look at all those hours on the road and stuff. Even though they emphasized, the Pence organization really emphasized not being away too long, it still was a lot of time on the road.
and the job
Um,
still had to get done.
and the job still had to get done. Yeah. And, one of the times that Lonnie really came to bat for me, I was driving the congressman. It was during the beginning of the campaign, probably 2011 into 2012. And we had been driving all over southern Indiana. The rule was 3 days away, and you're supposed to be home the fourth. We had been gone 3 days. I was dropping him off in Columbus, and we had the golf outing the next day. And so I was supposed to work the golf outing. So I was just going to stay down in Columbus instead of driving. I lived back up in Alexandria at the time, instead of driving all the way home. Well, we were at Thornton's there in Columbus, and he was getting his chocolate milk for his cereal. Chocolate milk for his cereal is one of the things that threw me. But he was getting all the stuff or whatever, and he said, "Hey, you headed home?" I said, "No, we got the golf outing tomorrow." He said, "That's not acceptable," and began to, you know, get on me about not going home. And I was like, "Look, I mean, I got an event tomorrow." And he said, "I don't care. You go home." Well, I was pissed. I was like, "Okay, fine." And so dropped him off and started to drive home. And the next morning, got up twice as early because I had to drive all the way back down for the golf outing. But before I even got out the door, Lonnie called and said, Ben, take the day off. You don't need to come back down. I told you that you could stay in Columbus. It's not your fault. I smoothed it over, so he would always go to bat for us and for the staff. And so just even that example, I loved, of him intervening because you needed somebody like that because you've got the politician, he's driven and he's got his policies and whatnot. Have somebody that is looking out for the staff. And Lonnie was always that way. And Bill, I mean, for that matter, Bill Smith was also, and so that was, it was just that type of thing. But you're right. It was a busy, busy time. And so I did the congressional stuff. When he ran for governor, I was field director for Northern Indiana. So that was my official title. Yeah. And worked with Crabtree and just, yeah, had a great time working with all the different victory centers, years of which was the lead for calls, if I remember correctly, in
I
part
think we
due
were
to your
I
mom.
certainly know that, mom had made the most calls, out of everyone, which again, at this point in time, my estimation was and the the proof is that they put me in charge. I don't know that they expected a whole lot of Northwest Indiana. I just,
Well,
um,
hey, we even, if you remember, we even borrowed cable, didn't we, from somebody else? And Doug
borrowed cable. I don't know what
borrowed.
the statute of limitations is,
I
but
don't either, so we'll
we
be
did
very
in
careful.
fact
But
give an intern a pickaxe
yes, to
and
dig a trench across the
dig
parking
a trench
lot.
across the parking
So
lot.
I
But hey,
mean,
that's nobody needs to
resourceful, I
know.
think, is the right term. Resourceful.
Yes, yes, we were very
Yeah.
resourceful. We were doing more with less. I don't know
Yes.
what else to tell you.
Yeah.
Um, we so I don't know that we were the number one the call center. I mean, I think we were the best. Clearly, when you have a victory,
That's right.
I don't see any other victory center directors on this podcast. Do you?
No, I
Nope,
don't. I don't.
just
Yeah.
us. So
Yeah.
let's claim that here. Um, so you are out all the time, and your wife's taking care of the kids. At any point, did you think that this is just going to be too much, or did
I,
you just have a focus
I,
like I'll let you know after November?
yeah, yeah, and I didn't. I should have. I really should have, um, because it just was a lot. It was a lot being on the road that much, with leaving two young kids at home with my wife, and so I do. There is a certain amount of remorse, guilt. sh- I don't know, shame. I don't know what the word would be,
Yeah,
but yeah, I should have, but I didn't because you're going, and hindsight, looking back, but at the time it was, it was the job that I had. And
and it was such a unique job. I feel like, um, at some point, somebody said, um, "Bob, you've in terms of political jobs that folks like you and I wasn't really involved in politics. I had in 2011, the year up to that, I had run for clerk treasurer in my town, which was um, good at the time. Looking back, it was a learning opportunity that catapulted me to where I am today. But I mean, I had zero experience other than I liked a good presidential movie. I mean, I had zero
yeah,
experience with any of doing any of that campaign work. Um,
yeah,
and it was such a unique opportunity. I think that's what because I'm in the same boat. I mean, you're gone 12 hours a day at least. Running the call center, it was 12 hours a day, 6
yeah, that was longer. Yeah,
um
yeah.
same thing when we first started. It was, hey, the Pence team doesn't work on Sundays. But then it
Yeah,
was, well, state party. What?
yeah, 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 right.
And so I really think that because of how unique of a spot we were in and the quality of people that I had around me, again, like yourself, like Chris, I think that bought me some grace with my family that,
Hmm.
okay, this isn't like he's, you know, doing some run of the mill job and we're all kind of suffering on the home front for it.
Right,
He
right,
is
right.
part of something bigger, which was something I'd never really been a part of, and neither had my family either. And so it really was,
Yeah,
and I think that's why, my mom got involved, and Beck was supportive in a way that, well, okay, I guess I'm going to be, you know, quasi single for the next 9 months because, you know, uh, date night included going to a rubber chicken dinner. I mean, it's just how
yeah,
it was.
yeah,
Um, and so do you feel as if you have now you've paid your penance and you're okay?
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah, I do, and
You pulled the cart
it's
behind you. Yes. No.
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, yeah, the opportunity is weird, right? Because he was a very driven individual, and to see the progression of congressman to governor to vice president was very rare for anybody. I
For
mean, in
yes.
political circles, to be able to have that opportunity to
Well, in
not
such
just
a
work.
short time span too. I mean, we're
Yes.
talking, um, I remember having I had met the team in the end of 2011. Um, but I mean, to run from for all of those in a 40
Yeah.
for myself, again, not involved in this. Um you came from the church. This was not necessarily your
Right.
house,
Right.
and all of a sudden we are it would take me back sometimes, like, wow, in a group of like 20, 25 people getting this person from point A to point B, I'm one of them.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
how is that it is the political lotto. There are people who
Yes.
go to different universities, get all sorts of degrees, and work so hard, and when they're lucky, they get to be the driver at 20,
Yes.
and then
Yeah.
that's where it fizzles and they go. And so here I am in my 30s. At this point, you're in your 40s, and we're surrounded and we're in this.
Yes.
That still, that gets me.
Yeah. And it was, yeah, it was crazy. And, you go from the campaign then to him winning, and
And then you get to do it.
Crabtree,
Yeah.
yeah, Crabtree saying, "Hey, what do you want to do?" And so I had looked at a bunch of the different things and trying to think, okay, again, because I don't, my expertise is going to be my connections. I don't have, like a lot of people, a a political resume in a certain agency or whatever. So I looked at boards and commissions and said, hey, nobody's doing anything with these 1,600 boards that the governor has appointments on, or 1,600 positions
Right.
that are on across all these hundreds of boards. And I said, hey, can I do that? And so created the director of boards and commissions and
Yeah.
started doing that, and shared an office with Diego Morales,
Oh, the
which
Secretary of State.
we could devote a whole episode sometime to that
We could.
separate.
We could, maybe in a year or so.
Yes, yeah, who knows? Who knows? Um, but and so that kind of was just the beginning of things before I did a variety of different things in state government.
I one opportunity that I would say that I had, I'm careful to say that I missed out on because, things happen for a reason, and at this point, I had already asked so much of my family. I think because after the election, I said, in those similar meetings, like, "Okay, now we need to govern." And
Mhm.
who goes where. I said, "Look, guys, I can't move to Indy. I just can't
Yeah,
do it."
yeah,
And I always felt like, that. And then, fast forward 4 years later, it was, guys, I can't move to Washington. I
no, yeah,
do that. And so I feel like, um, uh, some of those commitments to staying here in Northwest Indiana, um, at times I went through a period where at times I thought, oh man, it just really kind of tore me up. but as time went on, it turned into, do you realize how lucky you were to be,
Yeah.
to meet those people? And here's where I'll get a little sappy with you. Um, I always said the first thing people want to talk. Oh, you knew him, when he was governor. Oh, the governor of this and that. And then when he was vice president. Oh, and then I was fortunate enough to work on a few of the advance assignments, while he was in the White House. So having the White House email
That's
is
cool.
kind of cool.
Nice.
Um,
Yeah.
and to do all that, and so people say, "Oh, how was that? Was that cool?" And I said, you know, meeting Mike Pence was fantastic, but that ranks it like 3 or 4 when I think about the group of you guys that I got to meet. Um,
Yeah.
the one for I think anybody that knows us pretty much knows that it's your yourself, Crabtree, Mark Warner, Mike Neal, who came in later, because he was doing whatever.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah.
He was the tag on guy, but but that folks that know us, we have had a 13-year long text message that is
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
daily, and
Yeah.
um and I say to that, I mean, you guys, yourself and Chris Crabtree, everybody knows that I adopted Liam, and when it came time to say, "Hey guys, I need some letters," and stuff, and so I often tell people that this, like, if it weren't for these people here, I don't know where I'd be at in the world, and I don't know that I'd have Liam, and
Yeah.
that's the number one driving force for me. I go to work because Liam has a lifestyle that he expects.
That's right.
I can
Right.
get
That's
by.
yeah.
I think I can provide doing something else, but, um, so the centerpiece of my life was made possible by, you're one of them. And I say, so that is what I'm most proud of when it comes to, hey,
Yeah.
you worked for Mike Pence, for a number of years. And I say, yeah, I did, and it was pretty cool, but it is nothing compared to the group of guys that I got to know. And
Yeah.
so that's you, Ben Evans.
I I I
Yeah.
appreciate that, and I'm holding back the tears, but it's it is a good. I mean, a good group of guys that we've been together for quite a while, and like you said, and just through the ups and downs and
And I think we've
texting
all
and
had them.
calling and
We've all had gains, we've all had losses, and
yeah.
occasionally we're like really good friends and we support each other, and sometimes we're like a bunch of brothers where it's just like, well, you're clearly
Yeah,
an idiot and I'm not going to talk to you for a
that's
few
right.
days,
That's right.
and
Yeah.
we do that often, and
Yeah.
but I mean, what a group of men with integrity or vision or faith, or I don't even know what you would call us, but I do say that, um so your wife, watched, over the house, Becca minded the things for me when I was gone. We still have this thing that, hey, if Crab or Ben or Mark or someone calls, it's almost like getting the bat signal.
That's right. That's right.
It's,
It is.
as
Yeah.
busy
Yeah.
as we all are, and we're
It
all
is. Yeah.
doing all sorts of diverse things now. We're all,
Yeah.
there's still, um, I had a podcast with Amelia Fair not too long ago, and, she said, she worked, I think she said she called it, politics adjacent, and so that's some of what some of us do now. Some are more heavily
Yeah.
involved,
Yeah.
but even still, even though we kinda do our own thing, we're still and if one guy sends up the bat signal,
Yeah.
and Becca knows, it's like, alright, I'm
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know what to do. It's a weird thing, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
No.
Um,
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed.
one thing I wanna we'll probably dance back to how we met a couple times. I do wanna give a shout out to your brother for a second here.
Ah. Yeah.
I you know, I watch him on social media, and I've not seen a guy with such positivity. Now, we all know social media is what it is. I am going to
It
put up
is, yeah.
good days and, "Oh, Bob didn't post for 3 days." That's because that 3rd day I was probably depressed, shame eating candy in the corner, and I didn't want
Yeah.
anybody to see it. So, social media is what it is. But I have not ever really seen someone reinvent himself so often with such positivity as your
Oh my
brother,
goodness.
and I think, there has to be something genetic with that because you have always been and I'm I had the word in my head and now I'm giggling with it because at times folks who are watching or listening, we are nothing but children.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You have that effervescent personality yourself. And
I
so is that this is just gonna be you and I going in the Wayback Machine to you growing up. Was that sense of positivity and hopefulness, was that something you guys grew up with, or was that something learned
you know,
over time?
I think it was learned over time. My mom my mom was the more outgoing of my two parents. My dad was not. And it was interesting, my father passed away last fall from dementia, and just really a lot of things began to come out that my mom began to talk to us about that I never realized about my dad and his personality. But
Right.
yeah, I think a lot of it came from that, and I was a very as a kid, it was weird. I was quiet at school, but we were really involved in our church. And so I would do Awanas and all this type of things where I was more outgoing, but my personality didn't really change until we moved from Atlanta, Georgia, up to Greenville, South Carolina, to a university there where my parents were on staff. And so you go to a little bit larger kind of arena or situation um, that kind of changes and gives you the opportunity to pursue different things. And that's where both my brother and I were able to get involved with drama there. I studied, if I had studied harder, I would have graduated with a degree in performing arts. I enjoyed the performing arts too much, so I didn't pass some of my classes because I was in too many plays and things. But I mean, we had like a fabulous Met stage auditorium that sat 2,500 people.
Wow.
And we would do large Shakespeare productions that my brother and I got to be part of. And so it was that, I think it was a lot of that creativity and stuff that came out from some of those type of things. And both my brother and I were involved in those type of productions. But I've always had, I think, just that little bit of, yeah, kid humor. It served me well as a youth pastor. It got me in trouble. I'm glad that we did not have, when I was youth pastor and so creative. I'm glad we didn't have Facebook and stuff back then, just because I think I can sometimes take it too far, and have a good time. But my brother does crazy stuff, like he did pimp my scooter when I think he was still in college or right out of college. He worked at the Greenville Drive, which was the AAA baseball team there in Greenville, and he sold advertisements, 1 inch advertisements, 2 inch advertisements to people. And he said, "I'll park my scooter outside the Greenville Drive, and people will be able to see the advert." He raised $1,500 just from people buying advertisements that went on his scooter. And then another, this was several years later, he did Rent My Forehead, and he started for January 1st was $1, all the way up through December 31st would have been $365, and he made it through about March, January, February, yeah, about March, for people that would pay to rent his forehead. He would do a YouTube video for him. So I'm just very far out, kind of creative, crazy
Yeah.
stuff. But just like you said, reinventing himself and doing different things.
Well, this isn't the John Evans show. This is the
No,
Ben Evans.
but
No. I'm only
shout
teasing.
out to John.
Shout out to John. Well, I'll figure out what timestamp this is, and we'll let him know and we'll
Right.
let you know. But how much of your upbringing led you into that? would we call it the pastoral life? Is that what you would into the
Yeah, it was.
ministry? I
I I I think a lot of it. It was very. Um, I was part of a organization that's called Fundamental Baptist, so believing the fundamental tenets of the Scripture, if you want to say that, and a very strict. For half a day at the school, even in high school and college, I had to wear a tie for the first half of the day. The second half of the day, you could wear a collared shirt. It just was very regimental and a lot of religion classes. So I had a lot of that really did steer that way. And then my wife's pastor offered a position to us to come back up here to Indiana, and that's how we got back up here. And I started really as a visitation pastor, which was like sales for the church.
yeah.
Selling. I was trying to sell Jesus, and it just was not. Jesus was for me, but selling Jesus was not for me. Like
Yeah.
where, they wanted me to go out and knock on doors and all this type of stuff. And so I stepped back from that position and later got into teaching in the in the sixth grade and then youth. But anyway, so yeah, it just kind of I feel like my upbringing kind of geared me toward a lot of that.
I I didn't have an upbringing that, put me on a path to be involved in politics. I think the upbringing that I had put me on a path to being okay with trying something new. There was always
Yeah,
that, and my dad will probably watch this and then call me and be like, "I didn't act like that," and it's like, "Mhm, yes, you did." Um, that try something new, but maybe just dip your toe into it because you need to go work and you know
yeah,
1950s philosophy of how you do things, which it has served me well because I'm able to you know do what I do now. But yes, I don't know that I had a background that would get me to where I am today. I don't know, it just kind of fell into it, I suppose.
yeah.
As a kid, so you're growing up. Uh, I can only guess now, but were you a good kid, or were you?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
I
yeah. I was like,
was.
well, I'm
You know,
thinking of the
I
three stories that you were thinking there, but
Y- Yeah, no, but yeah, I mean, I didn't get in a lot of trouble, and I hid it too. Also, like, like if I got in trouble in high school, I wouldn't always go home and tell my parents, I guess. But yeah, I didn't get in a lot of trouble. I never got kicked out of school. I never got a whole lot. We had what was called demerits. If you were late to a class, you got so many demerits, or if so it was again that kind of regimental type of thing that I usually avoided and had a good relationship with authority. I had a It was weird because there's some people that came out of that system and are very bitter, and like they will do posts about it was I'll say it here, but Bob Jones University, they'll do
Mhm.
posts about Bob Jones University and just really rip it. And you know what? I mean, I had a good time. I got a great education. Was it really strict? Yes, but I had a lot of fun. And with my personality, it's probably good that I had all those guardrails because I really would have been crazy if I had not had. I think because I did stupid, like I did stupid stuff within the boundaries of what I could do
And
just to be
stupid is
goofy.
relative. Stupid is relative
Yes,
in
yeah,
that I know some folks that would say, "Oh, I did this stupid thing," where I would find it to be unconscionable. But then
yes,
I also know that I've done stupid things, that, somebody on a different end of the spectrum would say, "Well, that's unconscionable," and it's like, yeah, at some point, we all have our own crosses to bear, and, um,
yeah,
but I do wanna pull on that thread, which almost has nothing to do with this podcast other than I'm gonna tap into your experience as a pastor. Something that I've noticed with a lot of people, so I grew up in a non-denominational church, which, to me was, I loved our pastor. He's, a good friend. I liked it. It was always a, I don't wanna necessarily say a feel-good sermon, but it was there to get you through Sunday, to give you something to think about, and then you'd go on your way. Um, so there wasn't any of the, doctrines or the dogmas that you might get in a Catholic church or any of these, you said regimented a couple times. None of that. It was very much
Yeah,
a, every other week could have been a church potluck, and it would have been just fine. Um, but maybe 10 years ago, I could be off. The church closed its doors, and another church, came in and was seated there. So it's been maybe, 20, 25 years since my, high school, college days out of, high school, 25. Okay, I'm gonna let
yeah,
my
yeah,
thoughts gonna fester. So 25, 30 years.
yeah,
Um Since then, and what I've noticed, and this is gonna speak to you saying some of those folks that went there had a completely different experience. There is something about half or more of those people that, today you would expect them to be, Christian, conservative, Republican, and they are so far out there that,
yes,
I remember one time I was, a an odd bit of truth here. A lot of the friends that I had, growing up until about the age of 2025, we're not associated on social media, everybody does their own things, and one of the parting comments that I had from, one of the women that, I went to church with, I was, working for Pence, doing that type of stuff. I got a message that said, "You need to remember where you came from." And I thought, "Wow, that's an odd thing." But now I'm finding that so many of those folks were very what we would call liberals today. And I thought, "Well,
yeah,
how did you last so long in a positive, conservative Christian environment and make that last, and now you're clearly on a different political spectrum." I people put politics into everything now.
yeah,
You can't turn
yeah,
left, right, but that's the flavor of the times now, and so when I say, conservative, I don't mean politically conservative, though that's there. I just mean a traditional conservative Christian.
yes,
Um, have you in it I mean, you mentioned it with some of the folks you went to school with, but since your time as youth pastor, have you seen that folks that you would say, "Oh, if you went to church 20 years ago," but now they are something that I suppose mainstream wouldn't consider. I don't even want, I feel bad saying Christian, but there's
yeah, no,
philosophy and that ideology that they seem to be far away from, and I see so many
yeah,
of my, um friends, former friends that, I think, well, wow, it's, religion and politics are not the same, but in
yeah,
the world where they are, you're not like that, and I don't understand that.
yeah. I went. I don't. I think a lot of it is just that my personality, right? I think is I am very more Pollyannic in my approach to things than realistic sometimes,
Mhm.
and I have to kind of put a check on myself. But I think I don't. I think that has a lot to do with it, and a lot of it has been my journey, and I think growth from coming out of that. And I really feel like, and maybe I can unpack this a little bit, but I really feel like the God that I know now is much larger than the God that I grew up with, if that makes sense. And
Yeah,
that kind of has been my journey to where things that I thought were so restrictive and that he cared about through my journey and through really trials and hardships that get you to really depend on him and seek him more than I ever had in my life, I don't know, just began to open up with what I feel like that he was much larger than how he was pictured when I was growing up. And so I think that's some of it. I think my political journey too, like when I worked for professional, I went from the boards and commissions to professional licensing, and I started working at family and social services. When I started working at family social services and doing outreach to nonprofits around the state, my political moorings began to change a little bit too, because I began to see, okay, sometimes the things that we talk about as Republicans, they don't work on a street level. They don't work. And everybody, and we're seeing this now, with really the coming out about Medicaid and attacking Medicaid or whatever. Well, with the idea, I think sometimes, and I'm generalizing, that sometimes the approach is, well, these people just want to sit around and they just want to drink their beer and eat hot dogs and live off of the government. Well, no, the majority of the people that I would meet in these ministries around the state want to have a job. They want to be engaged in society. They want to, and sometimes what we talk about sorry, on the platitudes are not the same as what you see on the street. And that really began
Certainly.
to shape and change, like, okay, how I felt and feel sometimes about, you know, political leanings, and began to change that, and also began to look at kind of, I think, a bigger God than what I grew up with. So that I kind of rambled on there, but does that
No,
make
no,
sense?
you didn't. It does make sense. How I would translate a very similar journey for myself was, um, I don't know for myself that I would say that I found um, a a bigger God. For myself, I found a much and again, these are matters of faith that are so individual. Um,
Yes.
I found through my journey of just all the different struggles in life. And you and I are joking here, but that doesn't mean that I think we have both reached out to each other in times of struggle.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
have to say that, I don't know what's going on. I think for me, I have found a much quieter God that
Yes. That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
for me is I've never been very good at prayer, and I had a conversation with Bill Smith about this. I've never been very good at prayer because in my mind, in my estimation, it's it's an ongoing conversation
Yeah.
that even when I do something to this day, to this minute that I shouldn't do, I'm still like, oh yeah, I know, my bad. We'll talk about that later. And I don't mean that to say like I'm pushing off. It's just I feel
Right.
like it's more of um, for me, like a totality that it's very quiet. It doesn't need to be loud. I don't need to, um, go sing 12 sermons or hymnals every Sunday.
Yeah.
It's just for me, it's very quiet. Um,
It's a relationship, right? I think
yes, and
it's a
I have huge issues with religion now. I don't know why.
yes.
I don't know
Yes.
why. Um, the
Well, I mean,
organization.
religion puts, yeah, the organizational structure sometimes it puts so many things, I think, and can put so many things that aren't there, as opposed to, and this is what I really tried to emphasize as a youth pastor, as a minister. It's about a love relationship with God. It's not all these extra things that we want to put on it. And really, when you look at the scriptures, the Christ and his ministry, which we can get into the whole Christian and politics, Christ did most of his harshest criticism of the religious movement of the time.
Right.
It wasn't. I think one time he called Herod a fox. I mean, and so the majority of it was not focused on. And things have been pretty bad in the Roman Empire, right? I mean, you can look at history and see that, but the attack wasn't about that. It was about a love for others, and he was attacking the constraints and stuff and everything that the Pharisees and religious people were putting on the population. And so I think it's just that it's a love relationship with God, and just like any relationship, it grows and it has struggles. And I think going through some of the things that I've gone through and getting angry at God and realizing, hey, all throughout the Psalms you can read where David was angry with God and lamented, the Old English term about, and so to realize that, hey, you know what, God is big enough that whether I'm angry or not or whatever, He is still. I still have a relationship with Him. Just like you said, with our group of guys, we're gonna have some times we're pissed at each other. There's gonna be times when we're getting along great, but we always are there for
We
each
are
other.
that's where sometimes I say that oftentimes it feels like brothers on occasion.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Nobody is spared. There's
No, no.
you did say King David, and I do wanna say one thing. I do have a cross tattoo, but the only religious tattoo that I feel that I really have, I do have, faith, hope, and love, but I have a tattoo of King David on my arm, and it's
Oh, nice.
abstract, and it
Yeah,
is, King David when he was dancing in the streets, naked.
yeah.
It's abstract, so I don't have a naked
That's
gentleman
good.
dancing on my
That's good.
arm.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but you mentioned King David. I am just entirely fascinated by King David, so much so that he's now, a permanent part of me because I think that was such an interesting story, um, and to end up, um, for me, where I find some of the peace and calm and silence and solace of God, and where I say it's quiet, is the King David where he's dancing through the streets and he's some accounts he was naked and the people were ridiculing and say why are you doing this and in my mind my relationship with God is summed up in that I'm not doing this for you. When
Yeah,
they were
yeah,
criticizing him, it's like I'm not doing
right.
this for you. And I take that philosophy through so much of my life when I'm doing things for my family. I'm doing things
Mhm.
for Liam, for myself, for the
Yeah,
family unit, the broader family unit of my sister and my dad now. That oh why you doing a podcast now? Because every middle-aged white dude, if he's not smoking something, in the grill, he's got a podcast. So I'm not doing this for you. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and so that's why I have that tattoo, and that meaning
That's
has
cool.
grown
Yeah.
on me over time too.
Yeah, there's a book that a friend of mine started us reading, kind of going through each year, and it's called The Call by Os Guinness. But in
Okay,
there, he talks about living for an audience of one,
that
and really it is an audience of one. And then, I mean, you do, like you said, it's for him, it's for our family, it's if you can keep that perspective, that does help. I'm not always saying I do,
oh,
but
it's difficult, and I guarantee you everything that I've said in this, 50 some odd minutes, I have failed miserably at various points in all of it. As a father, as a husband, as a son, as an employee, all of those,
agreed.
I have
Not that
failed
you
miserably.
failed, but yes, I have
Yeah,
too. Yeah.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
thanks for agreeing that
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Agree.
failed.
I agree.
Yes,
Bob,
Bob, you have failed,
total
and
disaster, Bob. Total
yeah,
disaster.
Becca has sent me a list,
Yeah.
and so, and I have let everybody down, absolutely everybody down, and, so I forget what you just said, but in my mind, um, there was um I love the show West Wing, and I think there was a
Yes.
title of an episode or something, it was called A Constituency of One.
Yeah.
And for me, boy, just that phrase has really been It's like, yeah, I know I'm going to mess up, and you know what? Tomorrow I'm going to mess up again. It's
Yeah.
just how it is. But there's that confidence that, well, I will figure it out, and go from there. I don't want to take up too much of your evening. We've been doing this about an hour now. I do want to. There's two things I want to cover. One of which is my Bernard Pivot questions, which I send out a questionnaire to everybody I'm going to have on here, and I say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. Um,
Yeah.
do you want to do it or not? So far,
Sure.
everybody has said yes. And
Yeah.
I put a slight disclaimer on there. I was like, because a lot of people don't know it. If I were to say the modified inside the actor's studio question, oh, everybody knows what that is. But Bernard Pivot, they
Yeah.
don't. And so you had asked on there, not that you had asked, you had said that, oh, you're going to look it up and get the good church answers for it. So
That's
we'll
right.
see how good those church answers are. But um, something that I'm just going to weave right back into the middle of the conversation that we had here, um, that has just absolutely changed my life, and I wish there was more advocacy for it. I wish there was just a megaphone the size of the stars to talk about adoption.
Yes.
I I don't have enough words where I wouldn't get choked up on that it has been the greatest, absolute greatest gift I've ever been given is the process of adoption. Um, I know I asked a lot of you. It'll be. Can you believe Liam will be 10 this year? He has, I think,
Wow.
6 days left of third grade. He's going to be in fourth grade.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And which is the same kinda shock and awe when you and I spoke maybe a month or so ago, and you're like, "Well, I won't mention your kids' names because this is," their thing is, "This one's starting to drive, this one's doing this." It's like, when did
Yeah.
that happen? But
This
before all that
flies. Yeah.
happened, um, if you wouldn't mind talking a second about not so much the adoption process. We could have an entire, and I've thought about that because
Yes.
I've got one or
Yeah.
two other other guys. A guy named Mark Chase who works for Lee Enterprises. He's got like 17 newspapers across the country. He adopted some of his kids, and it's this amazing group of people that I've found that have done this. It fell into our lap. How did
Yeah.
how did you guys go from, you and your wife to one day saying, "Well, we're gonna adopt?" And, I mean, what a leap of faith that had to be to say, "We're gonna do this."
Yeah. I think it was a leap of faith more after we got into it.
Uh, it's a
It was
roller
at the
coaster
beginning.
that, um,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
we never had, we got there and I interrupted you, but, "Hey, my show, what are you gonna
No.
do?"
Yeah. 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 That's right.
We had. And this is I should have Becca on here one day to tell our story. So I won't tell our story, but I'll tell my version of the story. There were a lot of ups and downs in terms
Yeah.
of how do you grow your family,
Yeah.
and um and so we had. I really do believe, this is my recollection of the story. She may have a different one, but I really do feel that at a certain point we gave up. And it was, hey, if this works, it works. If it doesn't, there's nothing we can do. And then it just kind of it happened, that we did.
Yeah.
But I say that whole thing to say, so we've never experienced the traditional family growth of being pregnant for 9 months and having baby and all that stuff. But I have to say that can't be. Oh, I'm gonna get so much flack for this, so send your letters in, I guess. I don't know how that could be as stressful as the adoption process. And I'm just gonna say it, and I say that out
Yeah.
of pure ignorance because I've never been there, so I don't
Right.
know.
Right. Right.
But the emotional roller coaster that is an adoption process, you had said earlier that yours was an international adoption.
Right. Right.
Ours was, interstate, intrastate,
Mhm.
interstate, across
Yeah.
the across the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, you'd be hard pressed to find something more stressful than that other than some, you know, I don't even know. I don't even know. So
Yeah.
how'd you guys say, "We're gonna do this and we're gonna stick through it"?
Yeah, we were married for 15 years and couldn't have children. And so, yeah, began the process of looking into adoption. And, you hear, and you guys did the within the United States. And, at the time we had heard so much about, well, what happens that, like if the parent decides they want the child back and all this stuff. So we thought, well, let's look at international. And, And so we began that process, found an attorney in Indianapolis. She had worked with a couple of different, we originally looked at Belize, but something fell through there. The attorney we looked at next worked with Vietnam and with Guatemala, but with Vietnam, you had to go and stay like a month or longer. And with our jobs, we just couldn't do that. And so began the process for Guatemala. And we decided, I mean, we wanted two children, one boy and one girl, and that's, yeah, how
Instant family.
the Lord provided. Yeah, yeah, the
Instant
Lord
instant
provided. And it was like having twins, right? Because we went down for Lincoln and then had about a month and a half, I think it was, or 2 months, and went down for our daughter. And our daughter was, Lincoln was almost two, and I'm saying their names, but uh 19 months. Our daughter was 11 months and weighed 11 pounds, so she was malnourished and tiny, and so had a lot more nurturing time with her. But yeah, it's what I would say is encouraging people to support families after the adoption, because I think so often there's the push for adoption, and then sometimes with the struggles and things that come afterwards, getting parents connected to resources when they're, it's a lot more. It had a difficult journey, and a lot of my growth and my faith and growth and my relationship with God came through just a lot of struggles over the years with different things from the adoption journey. Yeah.
I I remembered when, um, so this was in the Pence governor years. Um, we were going through the adoption process, and this is when I really discovered that, here in a world, again, I'm just going to say this, and you send your letters to whomever. We live in a world where, if your kid identifies as a cat, they have to put a litter box in a school, but for some reason, adoption is still a taboo topic.
Yeah.
And I don't understand that, and it was the singular defining thing that saved my life personally. It gave me
Yeah.
direction, and, so I remember when we were going through that process, at the time, both my wife and I were state employees, and we found that the FML Act, it didn't support adoptive parents, just didn't
Yeah.
support. So if you were going through a natural, um, pregnancy, a traditional pregnancy, whatever nomenclature you want to throw on it, you would get, this parenting leave off. And so
Yeah.
you'd get this medical time off because you just went through a medical procedure, which
Right.
was, I don't know, 6 weeks or whatever. And then you'd get another 6 weeks as parenting leave. And so all told, you got to have 3 months off with your kid.
Yeah.
Well, as an adoptive family, because you didn't have the medical thing, you were down to 6 weeks. But because the law said you both worked for the same employer, that 6 weeks is now combined for both of you. So now you can only
Yeah.
have 3 weeks. So if we worked at different companies, just, and in essence, we did, we worked for two
Yeah.
completely different departments. And, but if we did it, we would have 12 weeks. If we had a natural,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
traditional birth, we would each get 12 weeks, because then I could take off the first 6 weeks because I'm caring for someone who had a medical procedure. Then I could take another 6 weeks off. And that blew my mind because then there was no equivalency. So if you if you were pregnant and you had to go in for a checkup, as you do increasingly more as you get to your due date, you take sick time
Yeah.
and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Well, since I was never taking sick time, but I had to take time off to see attorneys,
Hmm.
go to the adoption agencies. They have to. I say, and you and I joke about this a lot. You know how I know we're the best parents? Because the state came in, saw that I had two fire extinguishers, and said,
Yes.
"You,
Yes.
you are going to be
Yes.
a
Are
good parent."
qualified.
So
Yes.
I'm blessed by the state of Indiana. They actually
Yes.
came and said, "Hey, running water, two fire extinguishers, two floors, you're good."
Not many parents can say that.
No, no. Some of these people, you just walk next to each other and they're tossing litters, and here I am. I got to have the state come in and inspect my carpet,
Yes.
and so it was through that process where I realized, wow, we aren't doing a very good job at this. And we're not respecting adoptive parents. Um, I had worked with Lindsay Craig for a little bit.
Yeah.
She had a heart and a passion um, for that stuff. As Pence moved on to BVP and Holcomb came in, I think it was within the first 6 months, Holcomb signed an executive order, um, really expanding what that paternity leave meant, and to include, adoptive parents and the
Yeah.
fathers, because
Yeah.
I let's face it, if anybody is watching this, for the four of you that you do, you know me, and you know Liam, and you know that there is nothing I wouldn't do for this kid. So to be excluded because of some law written in the 80s and
Yeah.
90s, because it's like, oh well, it's like, no, fathers are absolutely included, and it's a must. Um,
Yeah.
and the last thread on that I pulled before here is, that was one of the first times that I'm not going to say that I'm siding with the Democrats on this. I'm not going to say it, but it is one of the first times when I thought, look, we have probably one of the most conservative, Christian, faith-backed administrations in Indiana's history, as far back as whomever. And I thought, well, this is bogus. Here, we're constantly out here saying, um, the pro life argument, which I'm not going to get into that, but there are consequences that come out of standing on that pro life argument that the Republicans and conservatives were just completely dropping the ball on, and
Yes.
they
Yes.
had a point, but they just didn't have a follow up on that. And I thought,
Yeah.
how are we not doing more for
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
Um, because you can't just say, "Oh, well, you have options." Technically, you do, but
Yeah.
you said it best. On the street level, what does that
Yeah.
really mean? And
Yes. Yeah.
I think that is there's an execution error.
Yeah.
Executing that plan of saying, this is how we're going to help out. Um, and I'm only reminded of Suzanne Crouch always used to say something. Our measure shouldn't be, how many people we have on these programs, but how many people through our programs we help get off of these programs.
Yeah.
Um, and so I will let you speak for a moment on that, because as I'm talking about, I'm thinking, this
Thank
new
you.
thing that you're doing,
Yes.
um,
Yes. Thank you. Because when you
and
said
and and
that,
and I just, as I'm speaking of the words of Suzanne Crouch that come to me, I think this is your new wheelhouse, and I want to hear about that before I ask some questions.
yeah. So I had been volunteering since 2021. I found the email where Peggy Welch, who former state rep and worked for a variety of positions in state government, introduced me to Mike Woods, who started the Dream Center Indianapolis. And so I volunteered for quite a while. And then 2.5 weeks ago, the opportunity opened up, and I started as network director, which is basically fundraising. So I'll make sure I get you the link where people can give. Bob, so at the end of this, they can click the link. But it's
We'll
it's
put it
a
out there.
it's a fabulous organization. We're helping single moms, uh, bringing together a bunch of different partnerships under one roof. And so we have a partnership with Ascension Health to train the moms to be medical assistants. And then we do mindset training, teaching them to have more of an abundance mindset as opposed to a scarcity mindset. We also bring in financial literacy training with a partnership with IHCDA, and where they'll match their savings 2 to 1.
And
And
I saw
so
that,
they
and
go through,
I do want to interrupt just for a second here. You had posted something not too long ago, and it was, and tell me if I'm wrong. There's this program that these single mothers will go through, and it almost looks like it tracks from day one. What they have in their bank account, what they have in savings, what they have going on, and then and I could be wrong here, but there's like a 90-day tracker, then a 6 month tracker, and the growth that these women that you've helped, they, I mean, from housing to savings to a career path that they didn't
yes,
have just mere months ago.
no. And so often what happens, and this again is a perfect example of where the platitudes of government don't translate to the streets. So when you're making minimum wage and you begin to increase your dollar salary, well, if you get promoted, suddenly then now you're losing your food benefits, you're losing your healthcare benefits, you're
Right.
losing your childcare benefits because you make a couple extra bucks and it's not enough money to support your family. And so what we're trying to do is we bring these resources together. They go through a 40-week program, and with the first half of that being the training, the second half being where we're checking in on them and helping them through their initial job that they're doing, but kind of helping them from to get over that what's called the cliff effect. And we're focusing on those people that are are not in crisis, but they're just not thriving. And so really helping them to have hopefully a solid job, opportunity for growth. And so we've been through two cohorts of moms, two classes of moms. One started in the fall, and they're just about to finish up their completed time period. And then we're in the middle of the second group, and then we'll have a third group. We have a partnership with the state, temporary assistance for needy families is grants that we are able to get and use that to help the moms with a stipend during this transition period. And so just trying to really gear it to be an advocate for them, to help them grow, to help them get a good job, and to be independent, and to be able to provide for their family. And then we're looking in 2026 to do the same thing with young people aging out of the foster care system. So another huge area, 18 to 26, they just, you know, the resources a lot of times that are there. Like for example, we're in the process of purchasing a building on Ohio Street that'll have 6 floors of apartments for foster youth because it's hard for them to find a place
It
to rent and
also
somebody that will
says
trust
on
them, you
here
know.
is a an age-based clock that says, "Okay, best of
Yeah.
luck, thoughts and prayers." And
Yeah.
and I gotta
Yeah.
tell you, I, blessed to come from, the home and the background that I did, and I think I just figured it out maybe 6, 8 weeks ago myself. And so
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
put some of
Yeah.
these kids who were forced to grow up faster than any kid should,
Yeah.
that is a tall order of society to ask
Yeah.
that you instantly, because of this clock that we've put on you, be a productive member of society. How do you
Yeah.
do that without there being a support network there?
Yeah. And so we're developing the Dream Big network to bring around that network of support around the single moms, around the kids aging out of the foster system. If you go, it's Dream Center Indianapolis, dc-indy.org. Would love to have you check out what we're doing. Would love to have you be part of the network and be a monthly donor, give because we like we talked about our little text group. We That's a network, right? That we have
It
to be
is.
able I can reach out to you if I have difficulty. And these single moms and the kids aging out of, they don't have that a lot of times. They don't know who to, if my car breaks down, who do I call? Or how do I, if something breaks in my apartment, or what, I'm saying? So it's helping them develop that
It
network, having
really
people to
is,
wrap around.
and oftentimes I look at, like I said, where I'm at in life, and so little of it was of my own doing.
Yeah.
And and
Yeah.
and I often think about, the things that we do for Liam, and I think, sometimes I think, wow, if say he, was in the system and went somewhere else, would he have had that support? Now that's an
Yeah.
individual thought for Liam, but for some of these folks out there, it's like, man, I had, um, I think because it's politically tainted, the idea of it takes a village. I think that's just it's a sour note for me.
Yeah.
But I do have, like you said, our group of friends, family to call on. I
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't know of anybody who is successful in a silo. I don't know
Yeah.
how
No.
that can happen.
No.
And,
No.
you start
We.
stripping away some of those key components like a core nuclear family, a a faith-based group of, friends. You start stripping some of that away, and, in my estimation, it's very hard to claw your way into productive success without that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful example of one of our moms from the first class that got hired by Axia Healthcare, which is in the building where we are located. And she came in, and one of our staff helped her select her insurance. She had never had the chance to be able to sit down and choose, okay, I want this for dental, I want this for vision. And just what a great opportunity to have that network to be able to help her. And so it just, yeah, I'm excited to be a part of it, excited to be helping, and a little nervous because it is the first time that I've done the fundraising component. I've done the networking, right?
Right.
Because that's been our job
Yeah.
over the years in ministry and politics. But to take the next step and say, hey, would you support what we're doing? That's what I'm getting used to doing. But it's been a lot of fun, and looking forward to hopefully. I've kind of had my career in phases. I'm hoping this will be my final, that'll
Y
carry me off into the sunset
I was gonna say, is this your
after many,
swan
many
song?
years.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say
no, yeah, many, many years. Just,
right.
I'm just saying, like, I really enjoy this. It's nice being back. It's a faith-based ministry, so it's nice being back in kind of a faith organization, and doing this type of work. So a lot of fun.
I am going to, because I admittedly, I kept you longer than I told you I would, but,
All
you
right.
know, the
It's fine.
fact of
Love
the
you.
matter is, I think any one of the topics that we talked about, adoption, faith, politics, our friendship, the past, our group, we could talk for hours, and
Yes. Yeah.
the um, I think that's a testament to what we've built as a friendship, that,
Yes.
you throw out any topic, and we can talk for hours, and it's evidenced by, we have a 13-year, occasionally we will say delete the thread because somebody will say something that is slightly
So
off color, and
stupid.
we
Yeah.
think, we need to do that, but we have been talking for, yeah, 13 years now, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
shocking to me. So I'm going to get into our Bernard
Okay.
Pivot questions here.
Here we
Um,
go.
my
I'm ready.
my first question, that it's not even on the tin here. Have you yet do the Marco Rubio? Take your
Yeah.
sip. I'll
Okay.
do the same thing. Did you look up the questions first?
I did, but it was back when you first reached out, so I can't remember. I remember I think I remember one of them, but
Okay. Well, if that's the best answer, then we'll know
yeah.
that's one you remember. Okay, here we go. Bernard Pivot questionnaire. What is your favorite word?
Fixing. I'm fixing to do. So I grew up down south in Georgia and South Carolina. I lost somehow a lot of my a lot of my southern accent. Occasionally, when I say hot eyes, high school, will come, come out. But fixing, I'm fixing. I love saying I'm fixing to do this. I'm fixing to do that. It's kind of one of my favorite words.
What is your least favorite word?
Hmm. Um, Man, least favorite word. um, yeah, man, I would the first thing that came to mind was something to do with religion. I mean, just like that popped in my head.
Yeah, go for it.
So, probably religion. I would
Okay.
say it's just good. The least favorite word is going to be religion.
Without incriminating yourself,
Yes.
what is your favorite feel-good drug?
Um, recently, I'd say this last year or a little bit more, ashwagandha. I don't
You just
know
don't get
if
to
you're
say that.
ashwagandha. Yeah, has is a natural kind of calming.
Really?
Um, yeah, and I take a couple every morning, and and it helps. I do have we if you ever do a episode on mental health, I've struggled with depression and anxiety, so I do have some medication for that that makes me feel pretty good. So, but I mean, but just kind of a natural that I take every day is ashwagandha.
There is just to comment on that. I've got some other guests coming up. Um, there is, and I don't say this thing to take away from other things. There is an epidemic of untreated men's health issues that
Yes.
I look back at some of the decisions I made in life, and I think if I had had a therapist through my 20s,
Yes.
I would be a better person today. Better for
Yeah. Yes.
family, kids, employers, everybody. And
Yeah.
I think that is something. I've got a guy coming on my show. He's one of our fire chiefs in the area, and he talks. He's big on mental health, but also
Mm,
mental
yeah.
health in like the first responder community.
Yeah.
Um, but I think a lot of times, for some reason, maybe it's just an anecdotal meme out there that men's mental health takes a backseat to everything.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we often joke about it. Not about it, but we often joke with each other, even on our thread, where we're teasing. We all know we're there for each other. And
Yeah.
interwoven in some of the support is ribbing, and that's fine too.
Yeah.
But there really is, I believe, this epidemic of untreated men's mental health. And
Yeah.
like I said,
I have
I don't mean that to take away from women's
no,
mental
no. I
health,
have a
men's mental health, any of that stuff.
yeah.
But for men, I truly believe that, uh, you know, and oftentimes I joke. I say, if I go get a tattoo or a massage or go to a concert, I'll say, "Oh, this was therapy," because it's like, well, I have to find an outlet for something, some
Yeah.
catharsis somewhere.
Yeah.
And so, a mental health roundtable is something I'm really interested in putting together.
Yes, please. Yeah.
If
Let me
nothing
know because
else, for 3, 4, 5 guys to get around the table, and we'll throw it up here. We'll buy more cameras. I don't care. It's only money. You can't take it with you. And we'll just have a conversation about what it means to be a man and all the things that society says you're supposed to do, while at the same time says you're bad for doing that, while at the same time making you feel bad when you can't do it.
yeah.
And how do you function when you are depressed and
Yeah.
with anxiety and all these things? And I don't have the answer. And I think at the end of this roundtable that I would like to get together, the answer
Yeah.
is everybody go see a therapist.
Oh yeah, I have a psychologist that I see about once a month, and he is like a life coach, a mentor, and has really helped so much. But yes, yes, agreed.
Next question. If you were reincarnated, you could be anything else. What would you be?
Yeah, see, I didn't look at these well enough. I really should have taken more time with this. If I could be reincarnated, is anything
First thing
else?
that pops into your mind.
Uh, First thing is like an animal, you mean, or like
Sure. Animal,
um,
insect,
yeah,
cloud.
yeah. I would. I think of for some reason lion popped in my head, but I think that it's
No,
just a kind
flying.
of a guy
Well,
thing.
it's almost like word association. Whatever the first thing that
Yeah,
pops in your head, just
first
go with
thing.
that. What
Um,
what noise or sound do you hate?
Mockingjay, and I'm just kidding. Dumb and Dumber, the
Yep,
most annoying sound, right? Yeah.
yep.
Um, what noise or sound do I hate? I think whining. Like, if you have kids, like that whining. Oh, yeah. So
Yes. Yeah.
I would have to say that's the sound.
What noise or sound do you love?
Um, Family, just the noise. I mean, just like the spending time with my wife, kids, I think just that sound. Yeah.
What is your favorite curse word?
That's the one I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Good.
I'm struggling with, as a recovering Baptist,
Well,
um, what
shoot,
I should.
doggone it.
I
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, there's that one.
but I am really, my vocabulary really in these last several years has opened up, and I would have to say the frick is the version of that is my favorite, and unfortunately, in fact, I was on a business call. This is when I was still with Anthem, and uh, I was doing it in the car, and I was listening and talking with somebody, and I dumped my drink, and I was like, "Fuck," and I was like, "Oh crap, I forgot to put it on mute." And so I was like, "So yeah, so it's anyway." That's
I
my
so uh, much to Becca's chagrin, I try to teach Liam, look, there are no bad words. There's just adult words. And if you use
yeah
them in the right context, in my worldview, there's no bad words.
yeah.
Um, think I've said this a couple times now. Um, I walked past him in his room one time as he was putting Legos together, and he couldn't like get them undone. You know, when you get like the two flat pieces, he goes, "Damn it!" And I was like,
Yeah. Dang.
uh, "Because you know what happens when I'm trying to get two Lego pieces together? Damn
Yeah.
it!" And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I don't know that there are I love the word because I have had a few folks on here that I would consider, like yourself, uh, upstanding gentlemen, and it's like,
Yes.
well,
Thank you.
I don't wanna say it because I don't wanna say it, but on the same token, it's 2 in the morning and you stub your toe, it's not
Oh,
frick. It's
no,
not.
it's not. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but like I said, that is to Becca's chagrin. I do have the what is a trucker, a sailor? I don't know.
Yeah. Sailor's mouth. What is
Yeah,
it? Yeah.
whatever that is. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
So I would love to be an actor.
Yeah.
I did study. I think I mentioned I studied in undergrad. Had some great opportunities to perform in undergrad at in South Carolina, and then about 10 years ago, was watching commercials and thought I could do that. And so I reached out to Artistic Enterprise, which is here in Indianapolis, and I would say I've done 10 to 20 different videos, one commercial, variety of things. But I think that
Hold up, hold
would
up.
have.
I need to get. I feel like I need to get all the other guys on the line here. How did I not know you were in a commercial? But more importantly, why have we not seen this?
Yeah.
No,
I
no,
don't.
no, no. We can end it there because I will put my internet sleuth of a wife
Yeah,
out
do because
there.
if you can find it, it's a Saint. I think it was a Saint Vincent commercial years ago. I played a soccer player, soccer goalie, but it was one of those where they're doing a montage
Okay.
Have a bunch of different people real fast. But I did a training video for NCAA. I was played a
Oh,
softball coach, NCAA Division
right.
three, I think it was. I did for the Indiana State Supreme Court. They did a video on um, how do you what do you call it, where you get two couples together at the table. My mind's
Mediation.
gone. Thank you. Mediation. I was playing a divorced couple.
As Beck is gonna say, how do you know that word? But yes,
That's
mediation.
right. Yeah. So and then I played for some reason. I was cast a lot as a doctor, so I played a lot of doctors and training videos for Eli Lilly and different things and Cook Medical. So yeah, it's been kind of
That's pretty
it's been kind of fun. I think something's happened to the agency, or it wasn't good enough that they, after 10 years or whatever. But it's just something where if you look at commercials, there is a variety of people, right?
yeah,
And so just try it. So anyway, so that's what I'm waiting for my big break one day to be
that's
the
awesome.
next. I'm getting to the age where I'll have to be like Harrison Ford or Sean Connery or something. But you know,
That's exactly who I was thinking.
yeah, yeah. I thought that's probably what you're.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Question number 9, what profession other than your own would you not like to attempt?
I could not be like an auto mechanic. I'm not like my dad tried to. My dad taught me how to change my oil and work on my car and stuff. But I just the pay or computer auto mechanic or computer uh, technician. I don't like the pay that's where I would use the F word way too much. I think just,
Yep.
I couldn't, I don't have the patience for it.
Last question.
Yeah.
This was the question that I figured you probably remembered out of it, and my guess is I know what I'm going to hear. The last question is, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Oh, well, yeah. Well done. What's the verse? Well done, thou good and faithful servant.
Faithful servant, yes.
Um, yeah, I hope that he will be able to say that I loved others well. Um, yeah, loved others well.
Good answer, Ben Evans. All right, everybody. Well,
Um,
thank you for spending some time with myself and Ben Evans on your drive, on your doom scroll, however you came across this. I appreciate it. Ben, thank you for your time. Thank you for a decade plus of friendship, um, friendship that helped build my family. So I
I
don't know what more I could possibly say than that.
well appreciate you, and to quote the Bud Light commercial, I love you. So
That's
really do
yes. Love you too, man. All right. Thanks,
appreciate it.
everybody. We'll catch you later.